coming this evening. This will be very short because books when I was born, like from the dinosaur age, they were actually hand-carved and painted on walls. Seriously though, I come from an age where there was nothing for gay people. Essentially, it didn't have an unhappy ending. And by unhappy, I mean death, destruction, nuclear holocaust, all that sort of thing. Just to backtrack, I grew up with Noddy and big ears, which wasn't very sexual, although Noddy always seemed to have wood. I moved on to both from the faraway tree and eventually to the Secret Seven. My reading was encouraged by my grandmother rather than my mother. I think I read just about every book in the Pixie O'Harris Children's Library at Hornsby. Then I got on to pulp westerns of all things. And the first sex that I ever read in a book was heterosexual, of course. And it was a cowboy dropping his girlfriend to a dance or something. And he actually grabbed the reins, rubbed his arm against her nipple. God, that was erotic. I knew nipples were optional. Not those sorts of nipples anyway. I will jump ahead here. The first gay books I actually read, I don't know whether anybody here ever knew of or heard of a bookshop in Rose Street in the city, which ran off Pitt Street up to where the Theatre Royal is now. There was a below ground bookshop. There was a lovely little gentleman in there who wore suede coats and bow ties. We're talking 60s here, when most gay books were banned, or things like Another Country and everything else was banned. This gentleman used to watch the people that came into his bookshop, and he would sort of watch you and which section you went to, and he would come over and he'd say, "You really should look at this." He'd have a book, he'd have his thumb out, he'd open it, and there would be a very dirty section of Another Country, Finisterre, No End of the Way, or one of those sorts of books. And of course we bought them at greatly inflated prices because most of them were banned. But that wasn't romance fiction as such, because again, people died in them, or they had unhappy relationships, or I remember reading, where's my memory? Hugh Selby book, Graham, that he's famous for. Hugh Selby Jr. Last Exit to Brooklyn. I mean, I'm sorry, romance is not sucking off guy and tasting the shit from the person he fucked previously. That just wasn't my idea of gay romance.
No.
It might be now, it wasn't. But the only place you could actually find a happy gay story was, and it was where I did most of my reading through my teenage years once I hit puberty, was the back of toilet walls. We've lost the skill of writing on toilet walls. I don't know what it is. But the people back in the 60s were brilliant. Yeah, stories this long. They couldn't have much to do, I must admit. But at the entrance where I grew up and learned all my gay life, people were writing the most amazing stories, and they had happy endings. These people had sex and blew and went home. And even though Alison was saying that gay romance has happy endings, happy endings mean something different to everybody. My idea of a happy ending is two men meeting, going home the first night, and the second night they come to the midnight shift and have sex in the toilet with 500 different men. That's a happy ending. Not this monogamy business. I think one of the problems with male-male romance is that it's so structured. It's so full of monogamy and vanilla that it gets a bit boring sometimes. And sometimes I wish we could go back to the toilet bowl. Because those stories were direct, they were full of life, they were full of sex, and for a little 15, 16-year-old boy like me and younger, I could sit there and read them for hours. it helped that there was a hole in the wall between the two cubicles. The things used to pop through from time to time that you could play with or suck, or back up against. This was in the good old days before you needed the tom-tom to do it. And then I discovered, when I was old enough to come into the city on my own, because I lived in the outback at Hornsby, that there were toilets all over Sydney where you could do this sort of thing. There was a particularly notorious one down in Clarence Street near the Genesian Theatre, where I found out if you went there around about 4:30 in the afternoon, there was a young man who used to pop into fulfill your fantasies, which were written all over the wall. I don't know how the business in that building could survive with all this huge array of erotica. I wish I could put it all down and make a fortune just for regurgitating it. But he used to peddle his arse to anybody and everybody, and I remember the day when I actually got a chance to sample it. Going like Buttery, and there was a knock on the cubicle door, and he opened it and said, "I won't be long." Very deflating for me. But the books that I did grow up with in the 1960s and early 1970s, there was no such thing as romance. The exception to that was Mary Renault, considered by many to be the grandmother of male romance. She wrote The Persian Boy, The Alexander, the Great Trilogy, and The Charioteer, which was the first one of her books that I read. From memory, The Charioteer still had an unhappy ending, but it was about a fairly contemporary, I think it was World War II, fairly contemporary gay relationship. And that was an eye-opener for me. James Baldwin's Giovanni's Room had an unhappy ending. City and the Pillar, I think, has an unhappy ending, as does Finisterre, No End of the Way, Special Friendships, all those books. It wasn't until really the advent of gay liberation after Stonewall when we started getting our own romances. Okay, I know a lot of people don't like the fact that heterosexual women are writing gay male romance because people don't think they know where dicks go. I think they do. They may not do with them what gay men do. And I know from reading Facebook recently that somebody couldn't believe there was such a thing as spell check. I can tell you there is. But going back to the 60s, growing up in that era when there were no gay people on TV, and the first gay people who were on TV were in shadows so you couldn't see their faces. Most people here didn't live through it. It was a very debilitating time for gay people. We were taught back then that gays were weak, effeminate, cowardly, traitors, and there were no role models. And we were told repeatedly that we could not sustain relationships. We'll tell that to my boyfriend who I've been with for 41 years. Okay, we're not monogamous, but we are very much in love and we will be together until one of us dies. But because you have no role models, that's when you need male-male romance. And because we didn't have it, we looked to Betty Davis movies, Judy Garland movies. We identified with these strong women, which we shouldn't have because we were weak and defenseless. We should have been after Franklin Pangborn and Everett Horton. Anyone know who they are? Byron?
Poor Byron.
Really?
No, it's okay. I can handle the inference.
And I don't remember them.
But we had to wait for our own literature. It was like African Americans were not portrayed in mainstream American movies, except as maids, butlers, taxi drivers, things like that. They went and created their own movies for their own market. Okay, they were pretty cheap and pretty cheesy, which watch most of them today. But there was a market for it. Fortunately, post-Stonewall, there's been a market for gay romance. But for people growing up today, I don't think they appreciate how little there was for men of my generation, and women of my generation too. Women of my generation had Radcliffe Hall's The Well of Loneliness. Oh, yes, I don't think I would have been a lesbian had I read that. But this is bringing me to the one book that has had the biggest influence on my entire life that I've read. You might be surprised to know that it's the Oxford English Dictionary. The reason for that is when I was at school, I was a sissy at school. There were 4 of us in the group, fluctuated sometimes, there were 6. I went to a school that was hugely gay. We didn't find it out until after we left school. The school captain came out. That was in the future, but one of the vice captain of the school was this nasty little piece of work, and 4 of us were sitting in the school library one day, and he came in and said, "Oh, there's the filthy little campers." And I went, "What's a camper?" I had no idea. Camp, of course, was the word for gay people back in the 1960s. I asked somebody at school what a camper was, and he said, "That's not the right word, it's camp." And he said, "It means homosexual." And I went, "What's homosexual?" We didn't know these words. Gay people were perverts. We didn't talk about them. They weren't. You couldn't see them anywhere. So anyway, I asked this friend, and he said it means homosexual. And I went, "What's that?" And he said, "Check the dictionary." So we all rushed out to our little concise Oxfords. It wasn't in there. Not surprisingly. And we rushed around. I had an old dictionary at home that was about that big. It was written before the word homosexual was created, so it wasn't in there. We hit upon this fabulous idea that we'd go and look it up in the 2-volume Oxford Dictionary. We found it, and I went, "Oh wow, I must be one of those." And I thought, "Oh, I'm not the only one in the whole wide world." And it said, "See also lesbian." So I went, "Oh, I'm a lesbian." I was very happy to go around thinking I was a lesbian. Until somebody put me straight about, well, not straight, somebody corrected me about that one. But this is how ignorant we were, because there simply wasn't anything around. And I don't know whether you people who write this sort of material now appreciate how much things have changed and how much you are giving to the gay community for people to read. Okay, I may not be the biggest exponent of happy ever after. Particularly, or even happy for now. The formulaic part of it is what doesn't appeal to me. I do write it occasionally. Most of my stuff is just trade out sleeves. It's about men having very good sex and lots of cum, obviously. But to somebody who didn't have the opportunity to read this back in the 1960s, my life would have been different. I had no idea men could fall in love. The Oxford Dictionary definition did not say it was men who loved other men, it was men who had sex with men. So when I discovered I was old enough to stand in the toilet and suck dick and all the rest of it, that's what it was sex. I never at any stage thought I was going to marry and have children. I thought, no, they don't do anything for me, women. I would be a bachelor until the day that I was picked up. There was a lovely beat at the entrance. Sorry, am I rattling on?
No, keep going.
At the entrance where I learned all my gay history, etc., there was a parade ground where they had a carnival. Jimmy Sharman's tent show used to do it. And there was a toilet there, and I used to get picked up all the time. But my grandmother's warning about them cutting people's dickies off stuck with me. And I wouldn't get in the car until one day I thought, this is stupid, I'm getting in a car. And I said, but if you can't take me further with Morn Jetty, because I had to get back by a certain time, he drove me almost all the way to Gosford. We parked in his Volkswagen on the side of a hill, and I proceeded to sit on it and go for my life. And this man was kissing me, which was fine. I was into that, and he said, I love you. And I went, what? Two men can't love each other. That's a man and a woman have to do. And he kept on saying it. And we finished the business, and he was driving me back, and I said, what do you mean you love me? And he said, don't you realise two men can love each other the same as a man and a woman? I said, no, that's impossible. You know, no, son. He said, don't you have crushes on your school captain or, you know, sports people at your school? I'm like, yes, all the time. You know, what, you're in love with it? I'm like, oh, I suppose I am. He said, he was married with kids, and he said, you don't fancy women at all? I went, no, not particularly. And he said, oh, you'll probably get married and have children one day. I went, no, I won't. He said, don't be so sure. Well, I'm pretty sure I did. And he said, but there are men who live with other men or spend their whole lives in a relationship with other men. And I went, God. So I went back to high school and I determined I was going to become one of those men. The job would have been so much easier.
There was a book about that, wasn't there?
Yes.
You want to tell us
I'm
about
not advertising.
Tell us
Alison, I'm not
Tell us
advertising.
the name of it. Go on.
I've forgotten.
Red.
Actually, I can't even remember. It's called, what's it called? Oh, the Odor of Red Leatherette.
Yes.
Because it was everybody seemed to pick me up in a car that had red leatherette seating. Very classy. But had we had the sort of male romance that people are writing today, I wouldn't have had to go through all this. Okay, I was lucky. I was not one of those angst-ridden young teenagers. I discovered Dick and I went for it. Okay, I didn't think, what would my mother say if she found out about this? Well, I found out many years later what she thought of it, but that's another story. But that's why male romance is so important to people today. I'm glad nobody has to go through what I went through. I don't regret it because it's made me what I am and it's made me the writer that I am. And I will now shut up. Thank you very much.